morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Cupo Capital. Nice to see you, Becca.
Good morning, Betty. How are you doing? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you as well, and to everybody watching. I hope everyone's got their coffee. They're slowly waking up and excited to hear what's been happening at the Arizona State Capitol these last couple of weeks.
Yes. Well, first, I would like to start by recognizing that Governor Ducey rescinded the COVID-19 state of emergency. What does that mean for us here in the state of Arizona?
So officially what that means is that Arizona is no longer under COVID emergency powers. So many folks remember back in April, March of 2020, Governor Ducey issued a state of emergency for the pandemic, and then issued several other executive orders. This was actually the last executive order related to the pandemic to be rescinded for our state. And he really did this as, because our numbers are going down, our hospitalizations are going down. And so with the Department of Health guidance, they feel that we are at a place where Arizona, we don't have to have all these strict measures in place, since we are, their words, we have COVID under control. So any new variants that come around, that the state Department of Health believes that we can manage it, just fine without any emergency measures.
And you read my mind there at the end. I was going to say there have been several new variants that have come up over time, but it sounds like the Department of Health Services is not too concerned. So thank you so much for clarifying that, Betty.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Oh, and definitely. And I think that that's the Department of Health says that, with vaccinations, that they feel that they can manage any new variant that may come up. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Definitely. But as of right now, it's good to know for the community that that has been rescinded. Now, shifting from COVID-19 to what's currently happening down at the legislature, down at the Capitol. You've mentioned that the committee work has concluded. Can you talk a little bit more about what actions have been happening on the floor? And is there anything that we've heard about the budget lately?
That's a lot. There's a lot in that question. So as we've talked about before, committees are, bills have to go through committee before they can move forward. So any bill that did not get heard in the opposite chamber is technically dead. But as we always talk about, nothing's ever dead until sine die. But we did see very long appropriation committee hearings. There were a lot of strikers in those committees, in the appropriations committees in both the House and the Senate. We saw a couple of other committees meet this week, but they were meeting just to appoint directors and other governor appointees. So nothing related to legislative bills. So now that committees are officially over, we now have what's called floor action. And we've always had floor action, right? This is where third readings happen, CAL, committee of the whole, debate on the bills that have passed out of committee occur. Yeah. So, we haven't seen a lot of floor action because right now we're in budget watch. And so the legislature is going to slowly, do bills until budget starts happening. That's what they do. They can't run out of business because they need to have business to continuing through the legislative session. So we're going to start seeing trickling calendars on third reads and CAL. I believe like this week, for example, this coming week, I should say, the ASDB bill, the cleanup, LEA cleanup bill is going to be heard in CAL, over in the Senate and get voted on. So it's little stuff like that we're going to start seeing until we have budget.
I can't believe that today is already April 1st. And so we're getting close to the end of legislative session. And so I know that there are some bills that are being worked on, some bills that are being cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw something about a surplus of 1.7 billion. Can you talk a little bit about that, Betty?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's the reason why budget's going to take a little bit longer this year. We have a flood of money through various tax cut revenues, through the marijuana revenues, through even all the COVID dollars that funneled to our state in the last 2 years. So we have a lot of money. And when there's a lot of money, everyone wants a piece of it. And of course, for folks who've been, watching the news for the last couple of years, education is a big component of, is the legislature going to fund education back to 2008 levels? So everyone's talking about how are these dollars going to be used. And I think it's interesting that you just said, today's April 1st, and which, by the way, happy April Fool's Day. And this is no joke, but what is Arizona's right. 100 day is April. It's like April 25th, the week of April 25th. So that's when we should be sine dying. But with $1.7 billion and education advocates and legislators, there's a legislator who just wrote an op-ed in the Arizona Republic this past week saying he's not going to vote on any budget until the legislature fixes and funds education. So now there's a caveat to what that legislator was saying, is that what he's wanting to see in a budget for education is different than the public schools are asking for. So it's going to be very interesting. But when we have a very slim majority in the Senate, because it's 16 Republicans and 14 Democrats, if one Republican doesn't want something, it holds up the whole process. So there's a lot of power in that for that one Republican, whoever that is. So it's going to be slow. We're going to be on budget watch, I think, for a really long time. I would anticipate us going through May again. So, which is surprising. So, because it's an election year. Election years are really important for the legislators because they need to get reelected. And the primary is the first week of August. So if they don't get their stuff together, they're going to have a very short primary season to go out and get, their votes. Because they can't campaign. They're not allowed to campaign when they're in session. So they have to end session in order to campaign for their primary.
That's right. Some of our audience may be thinking what I'm thinking. We know how important it is for us as citizens to be registered to vote and to have our voice be heard at the Capitol, whether we be for something or opposed or neutral on certain bills. But when it comes to the budget, do we continue to reach out to our legislators and our senators to voice our opinion on how we think the money should be used?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think anytime a constituent has an opinion on a political matter, that is what their right is as a voter, is to contact their legislator and to express that opinion. So if someone, let's take education as a perfect example. If a person is very adamant that we should be funding school districts, then they should contact their legislature and say, hey, I'm a registered voter. I live in your district, and I believe that you should be funding school districts at whatever level. Or maybe they're, an advocate for school choice. Contact your legislature and say, I'm a registered voter and I believe in school choice. So that contacting the legislature is not just related to specific bills that we talk about, where we ask folks to email their state legislator, but the budget matters too. So that's why we talk about the budget in our updates, because it's super important. That's why it matters to us as registered voters. Do you believe in the flat tax? Do you not believe in the flat tax? Whatever it is, it's important as a registered voter to make sure that your legislature members know how you feel about it.
Thank you, Betty. That really helps. As I was thinking about that question, I'm sure other community members had a similar question. So thank you. Well, it looks like there have been some controversial bills that have been signed into law by Ducey. And I know that there's one that directly impacts the voting system. Can you talk about those controversial bills so our community is aware of them?
Yes. So this past week, Ducey signed 3 pieces of legislation. One, well, technically it was 4. One was a 15-week ban on abortions. So similar to what Mississippi did in their legislature last year. He signed 2 bills impacting the transgender community. One of those was prohibiting transgendered females from playing female women's sports, and another bill that stated that minors who identified as being transgendered cannot have any permanent surgery to surgery modification for matching their gender. So those were those two bills, the abortion bill. And then the 4th one was it was a voter registration bill. And that bill was stating that the county's recorder's office must verify the citizenship status of federal only voters. So anybody who has not provided documentation that they're a US citizen, whether they are, on the state voter registration forms or federal only voter registration forms, because there's two different types of voter registration forms, that they have to show their citizenship status.
Okay, and I read a little bit about the voting bill, and a few things came to mind as I was reading, and I know that we've had a conversation about this, Betty. Do we have any idea of the amount of voters who will be impacted, and is this constitutional?
Yeah, so the bill language states that anybody who, it's complicated to know really how many people are going to be impacted. Because the voter ID laws came into place about 20 years ago. So anyone who was registered to vote prior to 2002, I believe, must prove their status, their citizenship status. Or if they are registered as a federal only voter. Now, here's where it gets complicated. So for example, I registered to vote in 1996. So everybody, you know how old I am now. So I turned 18 in 1996. I registered to vote, but I've moved since. So in 1996, I didn't have to prove my citizenship because voter ID laws didn't exist in 1996 in Arizona. But I've moved since then, and I've moved since 2002. So when I re-registered to vote in 2008, because I moved counties, my voter registration form already, I provided documentation to that. So does that make sense? So if you've moved since then or have updated your voter registration on a state voter registration form, the system has already determined that you've proved your citizenship status, or it should have, because the system's smart. But if you've never moved prior to 2002 and have updated your thing, you have the potential of being dropped from the voter registration rolls.
Interesting.
So, now that's where the numbers vary from where 15,000 people can be impacted in the state up to 200,000 people. It just depends on when they register to vote. Have they updated their voter registration since 2002? And are they registered as a state voter registrant or a federal voter? So, and do you know the difference between the state and the federal form?
Well, I have registered here in Arizona. I don't know if I've done a separate federal form, but going back to, well, okay, I'm not originally from Arizona. I am a US citizen, though I wasn't born in the United States. And I lived at a certain address in the early 90s, and then I moved to where I am in 2001. Interestingly, I moved here in 2001 and I've been here ever since. And that new regulation started in 2002. Does that mean that I need to double check to make sure that my registration is updated and current and is still on the rolls?
Yep, you will definitely be one of those people who will have to look and make sure that you have shown your identification status, that you're a U.S. citizen and allowed to vote. Now, that's how I'm reading the bill. And I think that's how a lot of other people are reading the bill. So that's a case in point in why we're talking about this. So, but I do think it's important to talk about the difference between a federal only voter registration form and the state voter registration form. So in Arizona, we have, it's called a bifurcated system. And that means, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's a really crazy word. And what that means is that if there's we have, because of our voter ID laws, if I register through what's called a federal only form, voter registration form in Arizona, that means that I don't have to prove my citizenship status, because that is a federal voter registration form. The feds, Congress has never passed any voter ID laws for that form. And that's where this bill becomes potentially unconstitutional, because a federal only form means in Arizona, I don't have to prove my citizenship status. But Arizona says if you've registered to vote through that form, you're only allowed to vote in president and congressional Senate races. You cannot vote for any state races. Okay? Versus if you registered through the state form, from 2002 and to today, your ID, your citizenship status has been verified, and then that allows you to vote for any and all state and federal races. And so since this bill has been signed, now it's law, it will take an effect in 90 days. It's circumventing that federal only form. And so that is why the lawyers at the state legislature said it's unconstitutional. So the legislature's lawyers said this bill is unconstitutional. And so by Governor Ducey signing this bill into law, Arizona's going to be sued for it being unconstitutional. It's a lot.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's a loaded situation. Yes. Wow. Well, I better get busy and I better check on my personal voting record, and I need to reach out to a couple other people as well.
Yeah, so folks, call us. We'll help you. Becca's a deputy registrar here in Maricopa County, but we'll help you get connected.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Now let's talk about gun safety training. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this is going to impact our students, this new gun safety training?
Okay, so this is a bill that is still moving through the legislature. It has not been signed into law. It has not been voted on yet, but it has gone through both the House and the Senate. And it's waiting right now. Let me check real quick because I have it pulled up. This bill has passed the Rules Committee in the Senate. So right now it's awaiting it looks like it's going to go to third read. So to be voted on by the Senate. This gun safety bill states that all school districts and charter schools shall, meaning they must, provide public school students in grades 6 through 12 with one or more firearms safety training. So it's saying that public schools must provide training on firearm safety in grades 6 through 12. And it's essentially what it says is that training curriculum is to be comprised about like what you should do if you ever encounter a firearm. And so teaching those students that safety around the firearms.
And I remember seeing something about some exemptions for students who are on IEPs. So it sounds like the training isn't for all of the students. How would that apply?
That's a great question. So the bill actually has 2 exemptions. It says that if a parent of any student can sign a form saying, no, my student will not take this training, or a child with a disability and has an IEP would be exempted from this training. So those are the 2 exemptions. So as a parent, you don't want your kid to take this, you can say no. Or if your child has an IEP and a disability. So that's an and, meaning they have to have both.
Now I'm trying to imagine what that may look like. And I'm thinking about my son when he was younger. I know that this bill is specifically for grades 6 through 12. Obviously, my son had an IEP. He was at a school for the deaf. And at schools for the deaf, most of the students are on IEPs and or 504 plans. Now, you were saying that parents do have the right to request that their child not take the training. Now, at schools for the deaf, where all of the kids are on IEPs, does that mean the parents will have to say that they don't want their child to take it, or will the students automatically not be taking it because of their IEPs?
I think that's a great question. And I would have to assume that for example, ASDD, the State School for the Deaf or Blind, or thinking about Sequoia Charter School, that they are looking at this and what this would mean for their schools, because how I'm reading the bill, if that student does not have an IEP, let's say that they have a 504. Let's talk about kids who are in regular, not in a school for the deaf. Maybe they're in a school district. If they have a 504 plan and not an IEP, then how I read this bill, that parent would have to sign the statement that they don't want their child. So if that parent doesn't sign that, or they're not excluded based off of this bill, then what does that curriculum look like as far as being accessible? There's nothing in this bill that states that that curriculum has to be done in an accessible manner. So, I mean, our community spans all, we're wide, we're all humans. We all have our own different points of view. So maybe you are a parent who wants your child to go through this, but is this curriculum going to be worthwhile if it's not done in an accessible manner for that child to learn about gun safety? So I think there's a lot of different questions that have yet to be answered in this. So we'll see if this bill passes the Senate, and we'll see if what happens with the governor's office. So it was just something that, surprised me that it was moving through, that I was just like, oh, okay, this is moving. So maybe we should talk about it, because lots of folks are parents in our community. So why not?
It will be an interesting one to watch and see what happens with that. Wow.
Very much so.
Well, Betty, I don't think I have any other questions for you. Is there anything that we forgot to talk about today?
No, I don't think so. I think we got it all. But you know what? I'm going to say this again, because we say it every time we have an episode. If there's something you all want to know about, if there's a question about a bill that you've heard about in the news, or we say something here related to a legislative process, email us at info@acdhh.az.gov and just put the subject line, I want to know. And we'll answer it. Right?
And also, to add on to that, please check out our website, acdhh.org, and sign up to receive our legislative alerts as well. That way you can keep up to date with what's happening.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, Becca, it was so great chatting with you again. We missed you last episode, so we're glad that you're back. And we hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and happy Friday.